was a defining moment, as you put it,
Yeah.
on one aspect of it. But when you graduated college and you weren't certain what you were going to do, what was the first job that you had?
I work with my uncle. I
Cenk?
Yeah, exactly.
We should probably react to this Hasan video first, because this one's actually pretty insane. I can't believe that Hasan is just out here kind of spilling this tea now routinely when he goes on podcasts, not just political podcasts, but also just sort of normie podcasts. We reacted to that one. It was like the Chuckle Chicken, sandwich or something like that.
Yeah. And that's where he first kind of revealed a little bit of this information.
Right. And it's crazy because even like a couple years ago, maybe even a year ago, Zach and I were saying like, oh, I'm sure Hasan still really is appreciative of Cenk and the Young Turks for giving him the opportunities that he got, right? Like, how awesome would that be to have an uncle, someone like Cenk, someone that can give you those connections and give you a foot in the door of this industry? So we always kind of figured that like Hasan felt indebted to Cenk despite their disagreements. We always kind of felt like, in addition to being family, Cenk gave Hasan his whole career. We were, sticking by that analysis up until pretty recently, just because it seemed, kind of obvious who wouldn't like to have an uncle in that position willing to give you a job. But you would think that family members, would take care of each other. You would think that an uncle would take care of his nephew, look out for his nephew. Apparently that's not the case, as we found out not only in the Chuckle Chicken podcast or whatever it was called, but also, as you guys are about to see on Sean O'Brien's podcast, where Hasan is just like, yeah, let's get this out in the open. Let's get this out in the public for people to talk about.
Yeah, he's like, I really could have used a union, or it's crazy. And the last thing is, I just want everybody to think about, if you were in Cenk's shoes, what kind of a mindset you would have to be having. Like Gavin and I, we have a partnership here at the Vanguard, so it's pretty 50-50. We don't have any other employees, right? But I can't imagine trying to be like, you know what, man, what I really want to do is I want to sneak like 4 or 5 extra percent away from Gavin. So I have that 4 or 5 extra percent than him, just so that I'm making more money. Like, you have to have a weird, like, reptile brain going on up here. You have to have a weird, I don't understand ethics and morals thing going on. It's like, oh, wow, we're both making so much money, but I have to have a little bit more than you. Like, oh, I see a way to put a couple more quarters away for a decade from now. And it's really important to me that I have all of those quarters instead of my equal share. Like, I just mean, come on, dude. You have so much. And particularly, this was before it seems like the big financial problems had arose for the Young Turks, right? Just to unpack this. Over the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years, it has become dramatically more apparent that the Young Turks are in hot water financially. But when Hasan Piker was a big part of the network, or at least the biggest part of the network that he would ever be, they were doing much better financially. They had far more memberships. Their live views were better. Their clips were performing better. They had far more income coming in. So this wasn't some weird desperation from Cenk where he's like, we do not have the money to give my nephew. Like, it sucks, right, but I'll always make sure that my nephew's taken care of. So it makes sense that I can pay him less and still make sure that we're meeting the bare minimum for all of my other employees. No, this was about greed, plain and simple. This was about workplace exploitation, and this was about the boss wanting to have all of the profit and give none of it back to the worker. And I think that Haas does a great job of laying that out to Sean O'Brien. I have been really critical of Sean O'Brien because I think it's stupid that he cuddles up to the right when they have absolutely no intention of doing a damn thing for unions in this country. And we had on clip, on video, blasted out to everybody who wanted to listen to it, of Elon Musk and Donald Trump talking. And Donald Trump says the thing he likes most about Elon Musk, who would become his close confidant and chief financier, was that he would just fire striking workers. So I didn't think it was a very great strategy to try and court them by Sean O'Brien. That being said, this is a really great clip and I'm excited to watch it.
I'm interested to get your guys' reaction to this clip because, again, scorching hot tea. And I do feel like Hasan might be holding back some of this information, some of this damning information. I feel like he might be holding some of it back if it weren't for the fact that Cenk and Anna are out here pissing him off on a daily basis. He has to see shit, online that he totally disagrees with, that he finds to be completely objectionable and problematic. And he's like, what the hell is going on? If they want to be out here throwing the left under the bus, if Cenk wants to be out here talking shit, if Anna wants to be out here insulting me and my audience, then let's be honest. Let's get this out in the open. Let's let people make up their own mind about who these fuckers really are, because I have some experience to prove that they're not who they say they are as it relates to their business practices. And Cenk talks about how, oh, the people that work for me, they've been here for 20 years. They never want to leave. Some of them leave and then immediately come back because it's so bad everywhere else. Well, let's find out about how it actually is to work for Cenk Uygur and what a shitty business person he is, who essentially squandered one of his best assets.
100%.
That was a defining moment, as you put it,
Yeah.
on one aspect of it. But when you graduated college and you weren't certain what you were going to do, what was the first job that you had?
I work with my uncle.
Cenk?
Yeah, exactly. So I had nowhere to go. I mean, I graduated with honors, but it didn't matter. It's a terrible job market. There's no applicable, I didn't have the network. Like, I didn't have any people that I knew that worked in, any of these like big four consultant firms or whatever, which is ironic. Now that I look at it, that's what I thought I wanted to do. I was like, oh, well, this is applicable. I'll become a consultant.
Right.
It's disgusting. The
Right.
fact
Those are the people that you target, I think, on your audience.
100%.
And those are the people that, are causing a lot of these problems throughout this country. So that's quite a shift in attitude.
Yeah, it is wild. When I think about it now, I was like, damn, I wanted to go work for like PricewaterhouseCooper or like a McKinsey. And now I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Were you like taking gummies or smoking?
I can hella relate to that though, because there was a time in my life where I was like, you know what, this is all there is. Like, I'm not going to be a filmmaker. I'm not going to be a writer. Like, that's not going to happen for me. I just have to do something that I know is always going to be there. I'll work at like a nonprofit or something, or like an NGO.
Yeah.
Can weed back then at all? Or what was up?
No, I think, well, yeah, I guess for sure. But no, at that time, it was just like, I didn't have any sort of like serious principles. I was just thinking about it like, I want to make money and this is prestigious, That's what I thought in my mind. But I started working with my uncle, and look, I think it might be a little Turkish of him to do this, but he definitely let's just say he definitely took advantage of the fact that I was his nephew in terms of, the pay structure that I worked
So you
under.
definitely needed a union with a relative.
Oh, 100%.
No doubt.
Exactly. They actually did unionize the producers, but that was after I had left. But there was definitely a little bit of issues there as well. And I think that was my third, like, final radicalizing moment, I guess, was I had this IP, this intellectual property of the show that I like built out of for free, that I did because I wanted to do it on the side. It's something I wanted, and I knew they were not gonna, like, originally they were not gonna let me do it unless I do it for free, which is, kind of lame.
And this is your uncle's company.
And he's talking about the TYT show, The Breakdown, if anybody is curious. That was the show that Hasan created for them.
Yeah, it's my uncle's company. So I'm just like, I want to help. I want to be beneficial, and I also want to do this thing. I'll just do it. I'll just do the extra work for free on the side and like maintain this thing so that like, I can prove that it's good. And so I did that.
And for people who don't know, it's basically like BuzzFeed competitor kind of content that TYT was putting out from the looks of it. And at that time, Hasan Piker was a huge thirst trap account. He was known primarily as just being a handsome guy on Instagram. And this was a way that they were starting to compete on Facebook, because at that time, Facebook was still a place that you could compete if you were a left winger. People were sharing those BuzzFeed videos like crazy. And it shows that Haas understood the industry, and he understood where the industry was going. He understood that it was going towards TikToks, that it was going towards short reels. He had the foresight and the prescience to be like, yo, I want to get involved in this because that's going to boost my name recognition. It's going to give me clout, and it'll be good for my uncle's business. And it's just everything that Cenk doesn't have as a businessman reflected right here in this one example.
But it blew up. It got very popular. And instead of giving me additional funds to be like, here, let's build out the show more, let's give you a writer, because I did this in the supply closet, basically. I put a green screen up there and I started filming myself. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to take this IP and we're going to give it to all the other hosts so we can like make more of the same type of videos without spending any extra money. And that's when I was like, damn, I have no ownership over this. Like, I have no control over my hours. I have no control over this IP, this thing that I created, right? Like this thing that I put a lot of thought and effort into, and I did for basically free. I don't control it
It
at
seems like
all.
you're describing the third-party leasing arrangement that Amazon is using right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a great segue. You're a natural.
Crazy that Cenk squandered such an obvious asset. I mean, even if you totally disregard the family connection, right? It seems wild that you would do that to your family member. I don't know. That just seems I don't know. That seems weird just on a personal family level, but I guess, people people do that a lot, as the chat was pointing out. I guess you've never worked for a family business. I guess it's pretty common actually to exploit your family members if you own a business. That's weird. But either way, even just from an employer business perspective, what a stupid move. Why would you take someone who's doing something that is working and getting a lot of attention for you? Why would you piss that person off? Why would you mess with the formula that's already working? I feel like a good business owner, someone who's really, capable of running a network, which TYT truly was at the time, they would say, hey, this guy has it figured out. My job is to make sure he can keep figuring it out. I'm not going to meddle. I'm not going to piss him off, right? This guy's making me money. He's growing my brand. And he's apparently wasn't even all that upset about the fact that he was being exploited. So from Jake's perspective, he had the ultimate deal.
Yeah, I want everybody to think about this. So not only is everything that Gavin said true, in addition to that, Cenk was not ever able to see the waves forming and catch them in time ever again. Where was Cenk when it came to TikTok behind the curve? Where was Cenk when it came to Twitch behind the curve? Where was Cenk when it came to honestly, the entire next wave of long form content, right? He wanted to be Joe Rogan. He wanted to do the interview thing. All of it backfire.
I mean, he did kind of create the whole space that we're all in now. So you have to give him credit for that. But I agree that in the last 5-10 years, it's been a little bit of, playing catch up for him.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Since he let Hasan go, he has not been able to do any of those things. And so what he had in Hasan was somebody who was capable, was tenacious, and was just younger. I think a lot of what it comes down to is that when you're young, you can see where the trajectory is going a lot easier because it's just what you like to do. You are the trajectory. You are about to become how do you like to consume your content? That's something that Gavin and I realized was our special sauce. Like, what do we want to watch? What do we want to talk about? It. Let's do that. When we're 50, we're going to be asking a different question. It'll be, what do the 25-year-olds want to watch? Right. So that's why you should always keep your Hasan Piker close. But the last thing I'll add is he's doing the breakdown. He's doing these BuzzFeed style videos that are doing really well. He's created this intellectual property. And guys, Hasan was getting paid like $21,500 a year salary in Los Angeles, California, which means he was probably getting like $1,800 a month, $1,600 a month in Southern California, Los Angeles, to work at the Young Turks, to come up with all of these ideas and then not see a single bonus check in return. How awful, how gut-wrenching, how immoral is that? And we think about it as like a, tough upbringing story for Hasan because he made it. Because he did invent himself again and become ginormous. And now he sits with Sean O'Brien and he tells this story. But what about all of the other people that worked at the Young Turks that had their ideas stolen from them while they were paid a pittance to enrich Cenk, while they were paid a pittance to enrich Jeffrey Katzenberg or whomever else, right? All of their ideas taken away for their $1,800 a month so they could barely make rent in Southern California. Also, Cenk can get teary-eyed and play con man and be like, don't ever pretend like people ever had any criticisms of working at the Young Turks. It's the best place to work. How dare you? Well, your own flesh and blood has some grievances he'd like to air. We've talked to other workers who have grievances they'd like to air, and people are dropping away from you in mass. So maybe you should do some soul searching, brother.
Yep, 100%. And by the way, some of you guys might remember that there was a bit of a controversy early on in Hasan's streaming career where it turns out he was like underpaying his editors or something like that. Guess what? He actually took accountability. He took the criticism. He took the feedback. He made sure to address the issue, right? And that's kind of the opposite of Cenk at this point, right? Who just digs in his heels and refuses to change, refuses to actually address people's good faith criticism. And of course, no one even talks about that scandal with Hasan. I'm sure a lot of you guys had completely forgotten about it when I just brought it up, or you'd never even heard of it at all. Because again, he just did the right thing, moved on, and didn't make it all about himself, which I think we can all learn from a lot. But either way, yeah, it's also kind of funny, Zach, because you talked about how Hasan helped to pioneer that sort of like BuzzFeed style content, the short form, Instagram friendly kind of stuff. And he definitely did. But I also think what's undeniable is that Hasan's content is actually way better now that he is doing the more long form streaming stuff. I actually was never a huge fan of Hasan's contributions to the Young Turks, despite the fact that it clearly was working from a business perspective. I never really got down with it. I always kind of thought the videos were cringy and overly edited, overly scripted. I was like, what is this?
Woke.
Like, you know, I'd rather see a real conversation. And they were a little bit woke for sure. But, you know, it is true that they were really successful, although it is ironic that Hasan then became even, you know, bigger and so much more massive by actually doing the opposite, which was no editing at all and just, you know, yammering for 8 hours at a time, you know, 7 hours, whatever, on long form streams. So yeah, I mean, he clearly tried out some stuff and decided that he preferred streaming over the more edited content, but that could have been, you know, TYT could have benefited from that. If Cenk hadn't pissed him off and Cenk hadn't stolen his IP, exploited him, I mean, who's to say? But there's a chance that Hasan would have stayed with the Young Turks, right? There's a chance,
Bro.
And then they could have benefited from that rise.
There is a very likely outcome where if you turn back the clock and Cenk is actually a good uncle and not an exploitative piece of shit and wants to encourage Hasan and wants to help Hasan grow and take care of him and be a good mentor to him, where not only does Hasan start Twitch streaming under the banner of the Young Turks during COVID, not only does Hasan become the size that he is now, but he would also be interested, probably more so, because listen, guys, if there's one thing I will say about Hasan Piker, and it's a mild criticism, and he has every right to do this, he doesn't necessarily want to be the guy that constantly amplifies up-and-coming streamers. He doesn't typically have the reputation of being the guy that likes to pluck people out of obscurity and put them on blast super often, right? You don't see like Francesca popping up on, you know, Hasan's stream. Maybe not yet, but you know what I'm saying? There's not a ton of cross-pollination. He's very much in the Twitch world, is all I'm saying, right? And the Twitch world is very different from the YouTube world. So you're not going to see a ton of the TYT people popping up on Hasan streams, etc. And I think it would have been much different. I think he would have made a concerted effort to kind of marry his Twitch world with the YouTube world. But because he didn't really have a reason to keep fucking with the Young Turks, he kind of forged his entirely own lane on Twitch. And so now there's no real way for Cenk to even glom onto it. He's done entirely his own thing. He's not really interested in collaborating with the Young Turks. And the only time they ever do cross-pollinate is once a year on Thanksgiving when he debates Cenk and makes him look like a sellout right-winger.
Yeah, when he gets increasingly more and more humiliated with each return. That's the great thing about Thanksgiving. You can literally watch Cenk's de-evolution year by year. If you just watch going back from the beginning of that tradition to the most recent, it's crazy. You see the dude unravel mentally, completely go off the rails. It's wild. Either way, yeah, very, very interesting stuff. It's pretty shocking that Hasan's out here now on a regular basis, just kind of casually spilling this tea about his uncle, who is also, you know, media figure. What a disgrace.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir.